Hey, what's up guys, I'm Fennec and today I will show you the 4 best 60% mechanical keyboards. Of course, it is my opinion, but I think it's pretty fair. So let's get right into the video. Sorry for the lack of an intro, I don't have one, but I need to make one. Okay, let's get into the video. As I said, there are 4 keyboards, but I put 2 special ones and I will tell you why just in a second. Let me actually show 3 arguments that can convince your parents if they aren't actually good with this idea. Some of you may actually have an old keyboard, which is already one argument, but that's not for actually all people. Okay, now the price of different keyboards actually differs, and if you want to sell the keyboard, you have to actually pay like an additional $40 to get a new keyboard. So I mean like these 4 keyboards that I put in this video, but there are literally tens of other keyboards very similar to these. Basically, a 60% keyboard takes a lot less space, which is not good for only these who have a small desk. Personally, I have a small desk and the 100% keyboard that I use is pretty big. I don't have a lot of place for my mouse. The second argument that actually fulfills the first one is that it makes your setup look cleaner. Basically, you have 2 most common colors of the frames or cases, which is white or black. Basically, it takes not much effort to actually download a driver, and then you can customize the LED lights almost freely. It also matters from the keyboard, but there are many different presets. The third argument is that you can actually learn how to build the keyboard. Basically, it also matters from the type of the keyboard that you choose, but basically in every keyboard you can change at least the keycaps. Basically, if you try to build a keyboard from scratch, you may customize everything, but building a keyboard from scratch makes everything way more expensive. It makes it even 2 times more expensive. Maybe even more actually, because the keyboards I presented in this video are to like $150 with customization, with keycaps, with different switches and stuff. And building a keyboard from scratch includes over $200-300. So if you're like a typical person like me, I would just prefer to buy a normal keyboard and mod it, or just buy a normal keyboard with different switches included, and it would be probably fine. You can also test many different sounds, and I will show you the sounds of the 4 keyboards in this video. Now, I hope I explained everything and we can actually get to the 4 keyboards. Let's start with the number 1 on my list, which is GK61X. Basically, this is how the keyboard looks with a set of keycaps. Now, this is how the keyboard looks like if you don't order anything additional. The keyboard below is actually the one with the double spacebar. I prefer a single spacebar, but it actually depends on you. Why? Because basically, to build this keyboard, you need to order additional switches and keycaps. It is not complicated to install them in the keyboard. You can watch a tutorial on YouTube. It will take you around 30 minutes because you need to actually install 60 switches, over 60 switches and over 60 keycaps. Now, I actually recommend buying around 40 switches. I mean the more expensive ones if you want, because you will probably use letters the most, and then you can buy cheaper switches for numbers and different punctuation marks. So I'm looking forward to buying 40 of these novel keys creams. Why? Because they are the best sounding switches for me. And here you have a little ASMR of the switches. Basically, this was my ASMR. I did it using Mega Vibes, and this is an application that actually simulates the clicks of different switches. Okay, now when it comes to switches, there are two most common types, the 3-pin and the 5-pin switches. Basically, the GK supports these two types, and therefore you can choose almost every switch type. You just need to check if this is 3 or 5-pin. And even if you would take the double space bar, you would need one more switch, because basically you have kind of two space bars. But the switch entry is the same, so this makes no. Additionally, the GK is a hot swap keyboard, which means you can take out the switches very easy, and the final price would be around $100 to $120. Alright, number 2, we've got the Ducky 1-2 Mini. If you think it through, basically people compared it to the RK61 with no modded switches, and the RK61 had cherry MX browns. Now, Ducky 1-2 Mini can have various different switches. On the side, mechanical keyboards, there are hundreds, tens of switches to choose from, and if you choose the more expensive variant, it adds you max $5, so this isn't actually that expensive. The Ducky has very nice keycaps. Now, if we talk about the quality of the keycaps, I'd say meh. Like, basically, if you type a lot, like nowadays in COVID times, or you play a lot, this isn't so good. Like, if you don't hold your fingers on the keyboard constantly, it is very good. Like, basically the keycaps are very good. But if you play games, it is kind of different. It feels different. You can change keycaps, for example, on only WASD or additionally E+R. It doesn't actually matter. Like, the keycaps basically are good quality, but if you want to improve it, you can buy like 10 keycaps. You can't actually say that the amount of the switches you can request in your keyboard on mechanicalkeyboards.com is small. Let me read some of them. So, first we've got Cherry MX Black, Cherry MX Brown, Blue, Red, Silver. Then we have Gatiron Yellow, Red, Brown. Then we have Kali Speed Pro, Burgundy, Kali Speed Copper, Kali Box White, Kali Box Brown. Literally tens of them. There is like 20. And actually, if you want to choose like really expensive switches, which aren't that good for me, the sound's pretty trash, I must say. These are TCC switches, and they cost you additional $10. Okay, a strong thing about Ducky is that it has a very good case as for its price. It feels stable and comfortable. Now let's go to the third item on my list, which is a classic, N Pro 2. This is a quite old keyboard, and let me tell you more about it. Basically, this is another full keyboard, and the most common switches on Unpro 2 are browns and maybe Kales. I must say that browns are hated on a lot, but basically the sound, I love the sound. I don't know how about you, but I love the sound of browns. Basically, the quality, if you press on the switch, this feels very weird, you know? Like if you have used a membrane or a mechanical or a mechanical keyboard, this will feel weird. I mean, the switches work only for mechanical keyboards, but it also matters from the type, because if you have browns, Kales, it feels different than MX browns. Another thing is that N Pro is mostly white, and it is wired, and also there is a dual mode type. And what is weird about it is that there are around 6 countries in Europe on Banggood where you can actually get it. The keyboard is probably really one of the most popular keyboards out there. I mean, even in gaming keyboards, the 60% keyboards got really popular right now. And the Unpro got popular in around 2019, and it is still at the top in 2021. Okay, now the N Pro is really solid, but also expensive, because you can get it for around $60 with brown switches, and brown switches are not really that good in quality, so this is a big minus, because actually the N Pro is expensive, but it is not. Like the build of the keyboard is solid. It is solid, and it is why the keyboard is actually on top. But if you want something different than browns, I don't know if the N Pro is good for you. If you care about like the build, mostly the quality, okay, then choose N. But basically there are other keyboards which are good as well, and there is a tiny difference in between them. Now, the last keyboard on this list is by
Glorious.
I'm sorry, I needed to do that. Okay, but you may recognize Glorious for their hyper popular mouse, Glorious Model O, which actually started like the popular era of the light mice. And the Glorious GMMK is a keyboard that is hot swappable, the same as GK61, and Glorious produce their own custom switches, pandas. No, these aren't holy pandas, these are pandas, an alternative to holy pandas, which are like 3 times more expensive, and they're basically the same. Although this is the same thing like the Unpro 2. This is quite expensive because with the browns it costs $89. Basically, the Glorious GMMK is almost the same as Unpro tool, but it is produced by Glorious. But the Pandas are very cheap switches and they're good quality. Now, what would I choose? I would choose the GK61X, not because I favorize it, but basically the PCB and the case are only $50, and then you pay an additional 24 creams, which are like the best switches for me. You can buy nice, smooth, cheap keycaps and you will have the whole build for around $100. Okay guys, so this will be it for today's video. I hope I helped just a bit. And what? See you in the next video. Peace.